today's transformation session. I'm Jason. I hope you've got a nice glass of water or a cup of tea, nice comfortable seat, because we're going to be moving at a pretty quick clip today, and I want to make sure you don't miss out on anything. Today's going to be an interesting session. We're going to cover a whole whack of different issues, but I'm going to try to put it out there so that there's a little bit of a flow. First, I would like to start off by telling you a story about this woman that I know. She had been having some issues, waking up every day tired, not feeling well rested, lack of energy all through the day. She was waking up tired, she was going to sleep exhausted. She'd even told me that she was falling asleep regularly while driving on the highway with her kids in the backseat yelling and screaming. Can you imagine being able to sleep in the car with your kids yelling and screaming in the backseat? Clearly something was wrong. But she couldn't figure out what it was, so she went to, of course, to her doctor, her regular MD, and they weren't really sure what's going on. They suspected there might be a thyroid issue, underactive thyroid, so she went and had some thyroid tests. Everything came back pretty much normal. So they had to do more tests and really figure out what was going on. They couldn't figure out what was happening. So after a series of tests, we're talking 2 years of tests and specialists going downtown. I think at one point she told me she had to go to a hospital near Oakville to get this particular type of test. At one point, part of their solution was to put her on amphetamines. Amphetamines. Now this is a woman, by the way, who didn't have a weight issue. That wasn't what was going on. She had an energy issue. And what happened was with these amphetamines, of course, it's speed. While we give it to children perhaps with ADHD as a stimulant, for people who don't have these problems, speed is exactly what we think it is. It's speed. It speeds up your metabolism and you lose your appetite. So while it does give you that temporary boost, there's no long-term solution here. And coupled with the fact that you're not going to be hungry, which means you're certainly not going to be making the right food choices, and you're really not fixing the problem. So here's a woman waking up tired, going to sleep exhausted, on drugs, taking tests, going back and forth from doctor to doctor, and nothing was working. So what did we do? We had to figure out what was going on. So she came to me and we talked about it. We went through her diet a little bit. It turns out that this beautiful woman had been on a high-fat, low-carb sequence of diet plans for about 5 years. It started with Atkins, then she tried ketosis, which, by the way, are all basically the same diets rebranded, right? Who doesn't want a diet filled with bacon and cheese and hamburgers and fried chicken, and you don't have to diet, right? The promise is eat all the fats you want, and you don't have to diet. You don't have to exercise. Just everything will be fine. It sounds like a dream come true. So of course, it's appealing to people. A lot of people have tried it. A lot of people very close to me have tried it, including my uncle. Love you, Sam, but how many times do I have to tell you? Eating no carbs isn't working. For 25 years, you've been going up and down. Anyway, Sam's kind of changed. It's hardest to work with your family members. Anybody out there who's ever tried to help a family member, it's a little bit trickier to help out a family member, right? They want to go see a professional and have things done that way. So this woman came to me and we started analyzing her whole diet. When I discovered that she hadn't been eating any carbs, I explained to her the way carbs really work, and I'm going to explain it to you as well. So I want to ask the audience today, how many of you know what our first source of energy is? So I'm asking because a lot of people don't have this answer. We've heard all kinds. You'll see it on your screen right now to the right. Some people think it's water, the sun, is it the moon? I'm going to tell you what it is. It's carbs. Our first source of energy is carbs. When we don't have carbs, our body moves to fats. When we don't have fats, our body moves to proteins. Now, of course, we don't want to be eating up our proteins for energy because then we become emaciated. Now, the idea of working off our fats as our source of energy makes a lot of sense in our heads, right? Logically speaking, it sounds very exciting. Wow, yeah, I won't eat carbs. I'll go to my second source of energy, which is fats. I'll burn off all my fats and I'll be fine. Until you eat a cracker and everything comes right back. See, imagine you had a house that was powered up and your iPods and your iPads, your computer, your fridge, everything's plugged into electricity. But you know that there's a backup generator in the backyard that runs on gasoline. So if, God forbid, something should happen or there's a blackout, you power up the generator and you've got just enough power to keep you going. You can actually live your life like that. So let's say you never switched the power back onto your house and you started running off that backup generator 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. What do you think is going to happen to that generator? Just put it on. What do you think is going to happen to that generator? My guess is it's not going to last for long because it's meant as a backup, as an emergency. Oh, the results are in about the carbohydrate question. 80% of you said water. 80% of the people out there said water is our first source of energy. And that sounds kind of cool because our bodies are mostly made up of water. Logically speaking, that does make a lot of sense. But in fact, while our bodies are made up mostly of water, we do need to consume water all day long. It's not our main source of energy. Carbohydrates are. So I want to go through to you, and I've got some slides that are going to be plugged in here and there that are going to explain it in great detail. I want to explain to you what ATP is. Adenosine triphosphate. So basically the way it works is this. You've got 3 phosphate molecules. And when one phosphate molecule leaves the pack and then meets back up with those other 2 phosphates, there's a little explosion of energy. We call that one molecule of ATP. One molecule of ATP is in fact one molecule of energy. Now our body stores this energy, of course, and it's used, there's a little bit of storage left behind just to run our bodies, right? We need energy to run our heart and our digestive system and our brain function, our blood has to pump. Everything needs to be working. So there's just a little bit left in our bodies for that. So what it does is, while running our entire system, it actually comes in the form of glycogen. Like, where do we get our ATP? It's from glycogen. Glycogen is what gets converted from sugars. Sugars are basically carbs. So carbs, in a nutshell, convert into energy. And then our body stores up this stuff. 75% of it is in our muscles, all of our muscles, and 25% is stored in our livers. So if you've ever gone to the gym, for instance, and you work out, you're working out really, really hard, and at the end of your workout, you're just burnt, you're spent, but you feel you can do one more rep, or you're walking up a hill and you know you only have a half a kilometer, you get that last burst of energy. Some people call it a second wind. That's in fact your liver supplying your muscles with some backup glycogen, because don't forget, it stores 25% of it for you so that you can have it when you need it. So it replenishes your muscles so you can get that extra burst of energy. It actually keeps you rolling. And then 5% is left just for our systems. So that's basically the way energy works. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip. Now, we know that ATP comes in the form of sugar and glucose, and that gets converted, and it's all very boring and complicated. The truth is, it doesn't have to be. There's a big difference between simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. The simple ones are the ones we were fed as children, crackers and Wonder Bread and ice cream cones and sugars and all that white refined stuff. Those are our simple carbohydrates. And these are the ones that are spiking our blood sugar, ripping us apart, taking down our energy levels. We're crashing in the afternoons. It tastes good, and we get that instant gratification just as though we've done some drugs. Our brains react similarly to white sugar as it does to amphetamines and cocaine. The same parts of the brain are getting fired up. So of course we're going to crave it. It's called addiction. And if you start to crave these white flours and these white sugars when you get tired, and you go for that as your first order of business, you'll get that buzz, you'll get that rush, what you're looking for, and then you're going to crash. Sound familiar? It's not great. It's not great. So what I'm going to tell you is this. Concentrate on complex carbohydrates. Carbs that will give you that boost of energy and maintain it throughout the day. This is the kind of energy that's not going to have you coming up and down. It's going to keep your blood sugar balanced, keep your brain focused. It's going to keep you energized, satisfied, and full. A lot of people I talk to who are on these high-fat, high-protein diets, they're always hungry. How does that make sense? Well, it's because you're not balanced. You're not getting a balanced meal. So my suggestion is to really concentrate on complex carbohydrates. If you've ever at a loss on how to do it and you're having a smoothie, for instance, throw a tablespoon of chia seeds into your smoothie. It thickens it up, and you can put it into your soups. It's a complex carbohydrate, it's a complete protein, and it's filled with healthy fats. So there are ways that we can eat carbs that will energize us. Don't forget, food is our fuel. It's not supposed to make us tired. Let's move on. I would like to ask the audience today if anybody has any digestive issues. Now, Digestive issues come in many different forms, and I can't tell you how many clients I've had over the years that say, no, I don't have any digestive issues. And then 20 minutes into the assessment, we discover there's a little bit of heartburn, bowel movements are only occurring 2-3 times a week, they have diarrhea. These are all digestive issues. Anything that starts from the mouth, and you know where it ends up, is a digestive issue. So we need to deal with that. Let's talk about it a little bit. I'd like to take you through the steps of digestion. Here's a really cool, hold on, the audience feedback is coming back. Okay, so 70% of you today are saying that you have digestive issues. So that's good. We've got a really clued in audience today. People are really aware of what's going on. Or maybe it's because you're in the system now, you're being optimized, and you realize now that while you're starting to feel better, you realize actually how sick you may have already been in the past. It's amazing. We often go through life thinking everything's fine and normal until we fix it. And then you look back and say, wow, how did I live with those stomach aches my whole life? How did I live going to the washroom 3 times a week my whole life? So we don't recognize necessarily that there might be a problem. So let's go through the steps of digestion. This is a cool one. Everybody watching, start chewing. You don't have to put anything in your mouth. Just start going through the motions of chewing and tell me what happens. You notice saliva starts to form? That's awesome, right? So that saliva is a very, very important factor in digestion. So the first step of digestion really is when we start to see and smell. It starts triggering all kinds of enzymes and activity in our body. But the real physical first step of digestion is in our mouth. And I'm not gonna lie here, this is the most important part of digestion. In fact, it's amongst the only steps in digestion we have any control over whatsoever. Think about it. Once you swallow your food, it's out of your control. So let's talk about this a little bit. The saliva mixes with the food and creates something called a bolus. The bolus is that wet, mushy ball of food that you swallow down. And of course, the wetter it is, the easier it is to swallow. So what do? We drink tons of water, right? We drink tons of water. Everybody drinks big glasses of water because you don't want to drink pop. You're not drinking juice. Maybe a little bit of glass of wine, but water. People are drinking water thinking that that's going to make it swallow down easier. And I'm going to tell you why in a bit. That's not the best thing to do. You want to chew your food a lot. Really get it nice and soft so that when you swallow it and it makes its way into your stomach, most of the digestive process is already done. Think about how much energy your body has to take to break down a piece of meat, or a carrot for that matter. Anything that hasn't been chewed down and broken down, your body is going to have to do that. That means it's going to take energy. So digestion is the first order of business, no matter what. You could be lying on the ground with a broken leg. If there's food that has to go through your system, your body will attack that food first. Because if food remains in your body for an extended period of time without passage, without moving, it rots, it ferments, and will actually kill you eventually because it does become toxic. If you keep a piece of food out long enough, it's going to go bad. You don't want that happening inside of you. That causes a whole slew of problems. Excuse me. So once you've swallowed this food and now your body's taking care of everything else, it goes through, you see, I put a slide there, it actually breaks it down from the esophagus into the stomach, and then it falls into the stomach into something called hydrochloric acid. Now, this is a very, very interesting one. Before I get into it, I want to ask you a quick question right now. Do any of you have heartburn issues? I suspect maybe that there might be a few people out there, because heartburn is not what you think it is. So the food goes into the hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid breaks it all down into tiny little, more easily digestible pieces so that our bodies can take up the nutrients from it. Now, if you don't have the right amount of hydrochloric acid, obviously your food is not getting broken down, which of course leads to poor absorption of nutrients. So, let's step it back a little bit. You put your food in. If you're drinking a lot of water, what's happening there? I'm going to explain it to you in a few seconds because, I asked you that question about heartburn, and I'm just being told right now by my assistant here that a question just came in saying, what do I do to control my heartburn? The timing couldn't be even more perfect. I love when things work out like that. How often do things work out like that? I'm talking about it came in. Okay, so I'm going to explain it. A lot of people think heartburn is caused by too much acid. So what do? We take an antacid and we push it all down and go to bed and hope everything's going to be just fine. Yeah, sure. Why wouldn't a sugary, food color infused piece of chalk fix everything. So let me explain what's going on. It's actually most likely a low level of hydrochloric acid that's causing you to have heartburn. You see, what happens is, and I've got a great video that I want you to check out here. What happens is it starts to splish around. Things start to break down, but because you've already diluted it with water, you're actually not allowing the HCl to do what it's supposed to do, so it splashes and splishes, and little driplets make its way up. Those little driplets come up through the sphincter, the esophageal sphincter, and cause acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion. We've all had that feeling before. What's scary is that acid is supposed to remain in our stomachs. It's extremely potent. If you were to put it on your skin, it would burn right through. So what do you think is happening in there? You're starting to create ulcers. Eventually that could lead to really bad cancer from top to bottom. So what you want to do is make sure you do not have a big glass of water with your meal. You want to sip with meals rather than drink with meals. You want to drink between meals. Now, I'm going to give you 3 wonderful tips. There is a slide that we're going to put up for you. 3 tips to proper digestion. Tip number 1, chew your food at least 10 times. I know it sounds ridiculous. And how are you going to chew a piece of broccoli, for instance, 10 times? Use your head. A piece of broccoli and a piece of meat don't need the same amount of chewing. We're just kind of giving you a general sense of what you want to do here. You want to make it soft and mushy so that your body doesn't have to break it down. Break it down in your mouth, let your body do the rest. You're going to be so thankful for this. Tip number 2, we've already tapped into it. Sip with meals. Don't drink. By sipping with meals, you're just helping your saliva push the bolus down so that your body can do the rest. Drinking too much dilutes the hydrochloric acid, thereby putting way too much emphasis on your body. It has to do all that work, leaving you tired. Because that energy there's only one source of energy in your body. If it's being used for digestion, how are you going to get through that spreadsheet or through that soccer practice or whatever it is you have to do in that afternoon at 3 o'clock when you start thinking about coffee and chocolate bars and all? Your body starts to crave. Where am I going to get my energy, right? Think about it. Your coffee likely has sugar. The chocolate bar has sugar. These are carbs. Your body's craving carbs. Why do I always burp after meals? So burping after meals has a lot to do with also the heartburn and the way we're eating. So when I was a kid, my dad used to make fun of me. I didn't know how to eat soup. I know it sounds ridiculous. What do you mean you don't know how to eat soup? I used to breathe it in and swallow. And I'd swallow pockets of air with my soup and I'd be belching and burping and belching and burping. So I always thought that was the cause of my belching problem. But I had severe digestive issues growing up, and we had Crohn's in our family and IBS and all kinds of different things. So I was very tuned into what was going on in my stomach. Why was I burping so much? For the same reason that I was getting heartburn all the time. My body wasn't digesting the food properly. So that's my first suggestion to you is follow my 3 easy to follow tips to digestion. And my guess is that gas, bloating, and burping, all that stuff is going to start to disappear. It's going to go down quite a bit. Of course, you're still going to belch once in a while. You're still going to have occasional heartburn. But it's not going to be this lifestyle anymore where you've got your bottles of antacids in your glove compartment of your car because you know you can't make it home. That's going to go away. I have a great question for you guys now. How many people in the listening audience today eat fruit as a dessert after a nice big dinner? So you have your dinner, you have your salad, your vegetables, you've got some, let's say some potatoes, a nice piece of chicken breast made up beautiful in a mushroom marsala sauce. And now the meal's been cleaned up, it's time for dessert. You know cake and donuts and things like that aren't good for you. So you reach for the fruit. You cut up some mango, maybe some grapes, some pineapple. And then an hour later, it happens. The heartburn, the bloating, you might have some flatulence issues. You're definitely not feeling energized. I'm going to explain to you why that is. We were talking about hydrochloric acid before and how it breaks down our food. Well, we're going to talk very briefly, and one day in the future, in the very near future, we'll do a whole special event on food sequencing and how we can optimize our digestive process, but to the max. I mean, turning it right up to 11. But for today, I'm just going to give you this one little piece. Eating fruit after a meal is not a good choice. While your food is inside digesting, the meats and the carbs and the starch, everything's digesting, you're putting the fruit in after it. Now, fruit is pretty much all water and sugar. and it digests extremely quickly. In fact, fruits can take 30 to 45 minutes to digest, whereas a piece of meat can take 12 to 18 hours. So while that fruit is waiting in queue to get digested, because your body's only producing the enzymes of the stuff you've already eaten, it sits up top and it rots and it ferments, like we were saying before. You're basically making wine and vinegar in your stomach using rotten fruit. What happens? So imagine this. Take a piece of fruit, put it out on the sidewalk one day when it's 98.6 degrees. It's a hot, beautiful summer day. You take an apple or some open grapes or a piece of pineapple and put it on the sidewalk and walk away and come back 12 hours later and tell me what you see. You're gonna have a sizzling, fermented, rotten piece of fruit. That's what's going on in your belly. And when gas starts to happen, you start to get bloated, right? It looks weird, it feels uncomfortable. Men like to open up the top button of their pants and show off what a big meal they had. You're not supposed to feel like that after a meal, but you're starting to know that already. We know that already. So don't eat fruit after meals. Eat fruit between meals, during the day, or before your meal. Nothing wrong with a piece of grapefruit before you sit down and have dinner. It'll start activating digestive enzymes. It gets your liver functioning. It's fruit, so it's going to make its way right through you. You're going to get all these vitamins. And then you're priming yourself for a really nice, healthy meal. That's what I suggest. Now, don't kid yourself. 80% of the people today eat fruit after their meals, and I'm not gonna lie, my mom does it, my wife still does it, my beautiful, lovely wife, she still insists on eating fruit after her meals. That being said, my wife is a vegetarian, so it doesn't take as long for her to digest stuff, but still, it's a hard habit to break, but I really want you to just be cognizant of it. Be aware of it. You're gonna have fruit after your next meal? Maybe journal it. How did you feel an hour later? 2, 3 hours later? Journal how you felt, and then maybe the next day try not doing it. Journal that, see how it felt. Did one feel better than the other? My guess is yeah. Eating the fruit after your meal is going to cause more problems than you had anticipated. I think we're at the right point in the session today to talk about our tip of the day. Right? This optimization program, what is it about? Making small changes that bring on massive results. Right? Little, tiny, easy to follow changes that take a lifetime to build these bad habits, but a little tiny change is going to bring a beautiful future. So today's tip, and I want everybody to do this, it's very, very simple, and we've already touched on it today. We're just going over it. As of tonight's meal, no longer drink a glass of water with your meal. Fill up no more than 4 ounces of water, and just sip it, just enough to help push it down. Don't quench your thirst with water while you're eating a meal. If you're that thirsty during a meal, there's a good chance there's too much salt in there. There's a good chance there's too much sugar in there. There's a good chance there's too much fat in there. You see, our body craves water as its natural way of diluting too much salt, too much sugar, too much fat. So our body knows that that's what's going to help break it down, but it's not concerned with the digestive process. It's concerned with your blood sugar and your blood pressure. There's so many variables in our body. So what you want to do is you want to be cooking healthy, you want to be sipping with your meals, and you want to actually enjoy it, eat it slowly, take time chewing your food. But the tip for today is sip, don't drink. And I don't use gym equipment. As you can see by our fitness classes, we're not big on lifting weights and pushing barbells. I really believe in managing your own body's weight and really doing what it can do. It's not designed to push heavy weights around. Once you can manage your own body weight, then you can start adding weight. So I'm going to leave you with this cool little thought of the day. You already own the only piece of equipment you need to have a healthy life. It's your body. Take care of it, and it will take care of you. We'll see you next week.